In the third letter, the Rebbe writes like this. Behemshech to the two letters that I wrote to you before Yontev, and because of the tirdas of Yontev, I couldn't continue. And even though I didn't get answer from you on the two letters that I wrote, I will be mamshech what I started concerning college. And behemshech to what I said before. L'chura, you could say like this: since you think that you want to go to college, and the Rebbe says you think because really you don't want to, because the Rambam says every Yid wants to do the right thing, but still you think you want to go to college. But there's somebody who's telling you that it doesn't fit to your ma'ibed matzav, to your situation, because it doesn't fit for a tomim and for a talmid of the Rebbe, because the Rebbe goes along with me wherever I go, and therefore if I go to college, I'm schlepping the Rebbe with me, based on the Chazal said that Talmud Shegola, Megal and Rabbi Ime, that if a Talmud goes to Golas, his Rebbe goes along. So you could answer, who says I need this? Maybe for a while I'm going to be mafsik, I'm going to interrupt my tzir of a tomim, and I'm going to interrupt my tzir of a chassid of the Rebbe. Mela, all the tinies fall off. But the Rebbe says, you can't do that. It's too late. We know even in Nigle, a ger, a convert, it's Megayer, cannot change chas v'sholem. Even if he sins later, he's still a yid because he was Megayer. And the same thing is in Kedusha itself. If you become a chassid once, and you become a kusher to the Rebbe, and b'meila kamayim aponim laponim, the Rebbe becomes a kusher to you, so you can't stop that. You can't interrupt that, because it's not dependent on you, really. It's dependent on the Rebbe too. And the Rebbe, out of good kindness, is connected to you, he's tied to you. And therefore, you're connected, especially with the Rebbe, who is a Rebbe of Teiras Hanister, and in Zayar we know the connection that's there, like it says in Zayar, Mampniot and Avaya Dorashbi, etc., etc. And then the Rebbe says, I don't want to be Maidach, I don't want to go at length with this, because I'm sure that Sof Kol Sof, it says, Reg Chuter Lavira Ikrakoi, if you throw a stick up, it always falls down to its root, so it's connected to the root. So your root will become Niseirer in you, that your discussions to the Rebbe will be that you will follow in his ways, and you will tell me good news about it. And the earlier, the better. Because it says Yomim Yitzoru, that means there's a certain amount of days set to a person, and it's a waste any day moment that's you're not feeling the shlichus that you have, so that's a waste. So hopefully you'll tell it to me right away. And here we see a very interesting thing. Even though in this letter the Rebbe didn't mention the word shliach, but it's behemshach to the second letter before, which is telling him that you're a shliach, you schleppen the Rebbe. And here the Rebbe says you can't change that. Even though here the Rebbe says it concerning being a chassid and the tomim, but it's behemshach to the previous letter, so it's mashma that even the union of a shliach, if you become a shliach, you cannot interrupt that. That's something that's for life. You are a shliach, and therefore you have to remember constantly that whatever a shliach does, schleps the Rebbe along with him. That's how careful you have to be. There are very, very three interesting letters concerning the union of college, and also gives a very strong insight in the union of what a shliach is. Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak Bronstein, who's a shliach in Hollywood, Florida, used to years ago have a Judaica business. So once he came up with a hamtzah, with an idea, that he would take the little Sifrei Torah that are made for children, the little ones, which is just a photostat of real Sifrei Torah. It's made on paper, printed, and it has a din like a chumash because it has the words of the psukim. And he would manufacture a case made of lucite, looking like a stender, a few inches high, and he would put the sefer inside open. Put the Sefer Torah there, open, and he would sell it for a showpiece that people could buy it, and that would stand on the coffee table or on the side in the room. This is something that he could sell and make some money from, but it would be a very nice item to sell. So he made a few, manufactured a few, and he sent one into the Rebbe asking for a bracha. After he sent it in, he waited for a while. There was no answer. He sent it in during summertime sometimes, and the Rebbe did not answer. He got in touch with the Maskirim, and they said they don't know why. It's standing the whole time on the Rebbe's desk in his room, but the Rebbe is not answering. Till finally, it came Chanukah time, which is quite a few months after he sent it in. They called him up, that the Rebbe answered. And this is what the Rebbe wrote. Harei behanal shemes hagdeshim v'chulu. That in the hanal, in this that you gave me, in the above mentioned, meaning in this item, there are holy names of Hashem, etc. And this is underlined. The word shemes hagdeshim v'chulu underlined. U'ba'oisias merubois dafke v'chulu, and with blocked letters dafke, etc. Umi yochel liyas ha'achroi, who could take responsibility, sheyishmeru kedorush, that they're going to watch it, they're going to keep it, and keep it the way you're supposed to. Because this has Shemus Akdeshim, you have to have the proper respect, and it has to be a proper way. So who could be responsible that they're going to guard it, protect it, keep it like you're supposed to? And then the parentheses, afilu shaloi kedorish, even if not exactly the way it's supposed to bichlal have a shmira on it, watch it, v'chulu, etc. And therefore the Rebbe was saying basically that you can't do that. And then the Rebbe added, there are many, many different ways of parnasa, but not through things like this, like these things. V'kal, v'dal. V'kal means v'kal lahovin, it's easy to understand. V'dal, v'dai lamevin, it's enough for someone to understand these words are enough. In other words, the Rebbe is saying this is not a good idea because there's going to be in a place that people will not properly keep it with the right respect. And then the Rebbe wrote concerning the ones that he did manufacture already, you should get advice from a Rav who's a Yireh Shamayim, Meira Hiro Bepeil, a Rav who paskins l'maisa halachas bepeil, ma yase bekesher mikol anal, what you should do with all this. In other words, with the ones that you have, what you should do with it. And he actually got in touch with a Rav, and the psak din was that he could sell those that he had. I don't know how many. It wasn't so much that he could sell, but he has to have a sticker on it and the whole thing to write about the shmira, how you could watch it, etc., etc. I don't know exact details, but this was the Rebbe's answer, that since it has holy names, and it's even in black letters, which is like the letters of a Sefer Torah, so that's even holier. So who could be achroi that the people who will buy it will keep it kedorush, they will protect it, they will respect it the way you're supposed to, and even not even the way you're supposed to, b'chlal to protect it, and therefore you shouldn't do it. And you'll find panos in another way. This is a lesson in b'chlal when it comes to these things, how a person should behave, l'gabe selling things which might cause that people will not respect it kedorush. Concerning one of the voice notes that I mentioned about the Rebbe wanting someone should say V'yitin Lecho together with him in the Siddur, it only happened once, and most of the time we did not see that. So people were telling me that Reb Meir Harlik used to say together with the Rebbe V'yitin Lecho if it was a Motzei Shabbos, if the Fabrenge Motzei Yontif was also Motzei Shabbos, and the Rebbe said V'yitin Lecho, Reb Meir Harlik used to look into the Siddur. But I don't know if the Rebbe asked him to do it. I didn't notice that the Rebbe should motion to him that he should look in and say this together with him in the Siddur. Maybe he did, but maybe I didn't pay attention, but I don't remember that the Rebbe should ask him, point to him that he should look into the Siddur. When it was Rabbi Mentlik, that time that I mentioned, the Rebbe turned around to Rabbi Mentlik and motioned to him that he should come over and say together with the Rebbe, but otherwise I don't know. But on the other hand, my Mechutner Rav Moshe Klein told me that after Chav Zayin Oder, after the Rebbe had the stroke and he was in the Rebbe's room very, very much, so Motzei Shabbos, what he used to do is he used to open the Siddur for the Rebbe to V'yitin Lecho, and he would move away. The Rebbe would pick up his head, look at him, in other words, saying, say with me, and the Rebbe waited till he came over and said V'yitin Lecho, started saying V'yitin Lecho in the Siddur, and that's when the Rebbe said V'yitin Lecho. He was waiting to say it together with him. So obviously the Rebbe did want that people should say it together. He also mentioned, by the way, that he also would say, look into the Megillah together with the Rebbe. He was zeicha for that too. In Tovshin Lamed Ches, when the Rebbe had the heart attack on Shmini Atzeres at night in the middle of Akofis, and the Rebbe stayed in his room for a long time till Rosh Chodesh Kislev, so the Maskiros made sure that nobody should be in the shul upstairs, in the whole upstairs floor. The shul downstairs was open, but upstairs they made sure it should be empty. So they put benches in front, outside of 770, that it would block out the entrance, that no one should be able to enter into 770, into that floor where the small shul is and where the Rebbe's room is, etc., etc. A while later, I don't know if it's a week later or 2 weeks later, they had an article in the Allgemeine Journal, the newspaper in Yiddish, about the Rebbe and his heart attack and what's going on. And they had a picture in the front page of the Allgemeine Journal of the front of 770, that you could see the doors, you could see the building, and you see the benches blocking the entrance into 770. When the Rebbe saw that, the Rebbe asked, what is that? So they told him they're blocking out that no one should be able to enter 770 because you need quiet, you don't want anyone to interrupt, because the Rebbe's room was like a hospital room. It was like... intensive care unit that they made for the Rebbe, so they didn't want anyone to be there. And the Rebbe said, right away, take away the benches and let everyone who wants to come in. The Rebbe didn't know about the benches. They didn't ask him, but when he saw the picture, he asked what this is, and then they told him. So that's when the Rebbe said, no, you have to let everyone in. In other words, even though really it should be quiet there, etc., but the Rebbe didn't want that in any form or shape it should interrupt the learning or davening, etc., because of him. And that's why he said right away they should take away the benches and open 770, people should be able to come in, and people did come in then, probably with certain agbolas, etc., but it became open. In the Farbrengen of Leil Simchas Torah, the night of Simchas Torah before Akofes Tovshim Mem Vov, 1985, an interesting thing happened. Towards the end of the Farbrengen, after the Rebbe explained in many sichas the first 3 psukim of Atareisa, he finished off one of the sichas by saying that after these 3 psukim, we come to the end throughout all the 17 psukim, till we come to the last posuk, which is Kimitzi and Teitzasei, or Dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. And after that comes the union of Arachamim, like we say, after the psukim of Atareisa. Then comes the union of Ufaratz Yom V'Kedma V'Tzafeina V'Negbo, because in Lubavitch, that's a posuk that we say after all the psukim. The Rebbe didn't mention this, but that's the Seder it is, and that's why the Rebbe went with this Seder. And this will happen, Begula Amitis V'Ashleime B'Mheira B'Yemeina Mamish B'Simcha Tuv Levov. And after that, the Rebbe started singing Ufaratzta. In the middle of the Nigun, the Rebbe had motioned to many of the people to say L'chaim on a full kos. And then the Rebbe said, Behemshah to what I said before, which is in the beginning of the Farbrengen, that Simchas Torah, there are certain things that we do different than we do all year round. So there's another thing that we'll do different. All year round, the Seder is that we have empty vessels. We started with empty vessels, and the idea is to fill them, which means we're supposed to fill empty vessels with Torah mitzvahs. Simchas Torah, we should make a different Seder. That since there are full vessels here, full kelim full of wine, whether it's full or a half full or a quarter full, we should empty the kelim. Then the Rebbe said L'chaim on his own kos and finished the whole kos. He emptied his kos. And then, while they were still singing, the Rebbe took his kos, turned it upside down, which is bottoms up, and the Rebbe showed with the kos to all the sides, showing his kos that his kos is upside down. And while he had his kos holding in his hands upside down, he made motion with his kos that they should sing stronger. And then, after they finished singing, the Rebbe was ready to talk, but there was a lot of noise. So there are some people that started screaming, shash shtil, which made even more noise. So after the noise calmed down, the Rebbe said that in Cheder they used to say, Al derech hatzachos, a moshel of a king, a keser. And he said, because those people did not see what a king is, so they wanted to explain what is a king. So they said, a moshel of a father and a son. That when the father is sleeping, the son goes around and says, shash shtil, the tata shlof, the father is sleeping. So we understand when you have a minister has many meshorsim, many servants, and all the servants want to show that they're protecting the minister. So when the minister is sleeping, so they all go around screaming, shash shtil, the minister is sleeping. From that we understand concerning a king, that he's the king over the whole Medina. So when the king is sleeping, so the whole Medina, everybody who wants to show that they want to give cover to the king, they all scream, shash shtil, the melech shlov, the king is sleeping. So you can imagine what kind of noise that makes. And then the Rebbe said, you want to say shash shtil, wait till tomorrow morning when the king is awake, then you see then you'll scream. The Rebbe was trying to show that by screaming shash shtil, we don't accomplish anything. And then the Rebbe went on explaining what is the inyan of having the cup upside down. And that will be in the next voice note. The Rebbe explained that Farbrengen of Leil Simchas Torah Tovshim Mem Vov, what's the inyan of turning over the cup? And he said that it has a mokir in nigle. In the picture that the Rambam made, Rambam with his Ksav Yad made, when he made the picture of the menorah in his Pirush HaMishnayos, there he made the govim, the bechers, the cups, that they were upside down. That the white part was in the bottom, and the narrow part, on which it's usually a cup stands, that was up. And the Rebbe says he once explained, and it's printed in Likutei Sichos Chelik Chaf Aleph, page 164, he says he explained that just like we find in the Beis Hamikdash, that the windows were made different than regular windows. Normally windows are, at outside it's narrow, inside the window itself is wide, so the light should come into the room and spread. Here it was the opposite, shkufim atumim. And the reason is because here is supposed to be the opposite, that the light from inside of the Beis HaMikdash should go out. So the Rebbe says that's the same idea with the Gevim of the Menorah. The Bechai writes that the Gevim of the Menorah represent that it's Hashpoah Milmailo, and the Hashpoah Milmailo, the cup should be upside down, because when it's upside down, that shows that the Hashpoah comes from up down, like a turned over upside down kos. When you have to be mekabel something in the kos, you have to receive something, then the kos has to be straight. It should stand, and on top it's wider, and there you mekabel, you put in. But when you want to be mashpia on the outside, then it goes the opposite. When you turn over the cup and you want to pour out of the cup, then you have to turn the opposite. And the Rebbe said, so therefore now also he said to do that, because since the Rebbe want that we should be neiris lehoyer, that we should bring the light out, therefore the Gevim should be the opposite, as if when you pour out from the Gevim. When you're talking about yourself, the Rebbe said, then you have to have a kos that's standing normally. The bottom is on the bottom and the opening is on top. Then you could pour in what you have to pour in. You could pour in wine, etc. But when you're talking about Neiris L'Hoyer, to be a shining example to others and being mashpi on others, then you have to turn the cup upside down. And then the Rebbe said that from this it should be Yirotzen, there should be Hachana to Hashem will be Le'er Eilam Begula Mitzvah Vashlem B'Meir B'Mein Omen. And then the Rebbe finished the Farbrengen. In the Farbrengen of Yud Aleph Nisan, Tovshin Lamed Vov, the Rebbe spoke about a rich man whose name was Howard Hughes, who just passed away a few days before, and the Rebbe learned a lesson in Avodas Hashem from this person. This person was known to be very, very paranoid, etc., as the Rebbe explained, and from him the Rebbe learned the lesson in Avodas Hashem in the union of Zman Chereseinu, the time of our freedom, which is the Geya to Pesach. And the Rebbe said that the union of slavery and freedom is not necessarily because of your physical matzav, that you're physically in jail or physically a slave, and otherwise you are free. And the Rebbe said you could be a physical slave or prisoner and really you're free. And you could be really a free person physically and really you are a slave. And the Rebbe said, as we saw B'Peil, that there are people, and he said, nicht für kein Niden und nicht für kein Menschen gedacht, that there are people that are found in a terrible situation and they are basically in prison. But if they decide in their mind that they are going to connect themselves to things which are not limited, then they, in their mindset that they were really free. And he said, we saw that some people, Rahman al-Islam, were in the concentration camps with all the problems, but they connected themselves to Torah and mitzvahs, so they really felt freedom, she'ein l'maylam, and it felt like a freedom. On the other hand, we find that you could have a person that doesn't have any limitations, he could do whatever he wants, he's completely free, and at the same time lives a life that is the worst and the lowest type of slavery. And the Rebbe said, I'm going to bring an example. We know the Baal Shem Tov said that with everything that we see and hear in this world, anything that happens is a lesson of Avodas Hashem. So I'll bring a lesson that Rebbe said from something that just happened lately. Not long ago, meaning a few days ago, there was a man, the name of Hughes, the Rebbe said, who had passed away. And all the newspapers were talking about it. And he said, what is the Geya to me? What is the Geya? What happened to this guy? Why is it important for us to know? So the Rebbe says, till he thought about it, and he realized that you could learn from here a very special lesson concerning Zman Cheyeseinu Kaseinu Chedes Nishan, till I realized that this is a very simple lesson, and at the same time, a very deep lesson. And the Rebbe explained what kind of person he was. He was a person that had $2 billion, and he could do whatever he wants with it. He was so powerful that even governments, took his opinion in consideration. Governments were afraid of him. And they did everything that he wanted. But how did he actually live? We know that even a simple child, even a poor person does what he wills, eat what he wants. He eats what he wants, does what he wants. But here we had a person at $2 billion. And how did he pass his life? How did he live? If he wanted to go anywhere, he was afraid that they might shoot him there. Someone might kidnap him. Someone will take away his money. If he wanted to eat something, he was afraid that they're going to put poison in it. He wanted to go someplace, he made a secret out of it, that no one should know where he goes, because he's afraid that they're going to stop him. Somebody's going to stop him and demand half $1 billion, demand $100,000, whatever it is. So he couldn't move. He was always afraid. He had many, many guards, and he was afraid of them too, that maybe they were bribed and who knows what they're going to do. In other words, the $2 billion that he owned did not give him any freedom. They made him become a real slave, that the worst slave that could possible. Because a regular slave, let's say a person who's in jail, he's not afraid every moment that they might kill him, they might shoot him. And he even knows that the time will come, he'll be released from prison and he'll have a normal life again. But here we had a person that was completely tied to the things that really was something that he could use for the greatest things, tied to his money, and because of that he was afraid to make any move. So that's why he lived in a way that he had no freedom whatsoever. He wanted to go on the street. He couldn't go on the street because he was afraid. Now, what was made up afraid, it was really what to be afraid of. But the fact was that he couldn't go on the street. He couldn't eat what he wanted. He was afraid they would put in poison. He couldn't do whatever he wanted. And here we're talking about some person that was even more powerful than certain governments. They would do whatever he wants. Because he could have told them that if you don't do it, I won't give you the money. And they would have listened to him. Nevertheless, Bapayel, what happened to his money? Not only didn't he use his money for the right things, but this money made him into a real slave, that he was the opposite of freedom, even though he really had freedom and could do whatever he wants. And this is the lesson concerning every person, concerning Zman Chereseinu. The first thing is that we have to learn from here that you have to use your money for the right things. You don't just put your money in the bank account and use it for right things. But the other thing is that you shouldn't allow the money should make you into a slave. You have to be free. So freedom does not depend in the physical part of freedom. It's in the mindset, how you know if you connect yourself to Torah and mitzvahs, then you are free. And here we have an example of somebody who had every opportunity, everything that he wanted, and really was a real slave. In the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Meketz, Shabbos Chanukah Tovshin Chov Daled, the Rebbe asked Akasha, why do we mention in Hanera Salolu that the miracles by Chanukah happened al Yidei Kohanecha Hagdoshim through your holy Kohanim? What difference does it make through whom the miracle happened? Why do we have to mention Kohanecha Hagdoshim? And the Rebbe said this is to answer Akasha. According to the Rambam, who holds that we know that only by the three major Averis, Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, V'Shvichas Domim, idol worship, and murder and adultery, you have to give up your life. If someone forces you to do it, you have to rather die than do it. By all other Averis, it's Yaver V'al Yehorek. You could be Aver, you could do the Aver and not let it get killed. So other poskim hold that if you are a Mahader b'mitzvahs, you could allow yourself to die in order not to be Aver any other Aver. But the Rambam holds you're not allowed to. And therefore, the Rebbe asked the Shaila, how would in the time of Chanukah allowed to be Meiser Nefesh, according to the Rambam? Since by Chanukah we know that the Gzeira was mainly on three Averis, which means they wanted them to do three Averis, which is the Rosh Tevis Someach Shin Mem Ches, which is Shabbos, Milah, and Chodesh. But it's not one of those three. So according to the Rambam, they were not allowed to be Meiser Nefesh. So that's why the Rebbe said, the Rambam himself holds that an Odom Choshuv, a special person, that people learn from him, even the Rambam agrees that he's allowed to be Meiser Nefesh on other Averos, which are not one of the three major ones. That's why we say, Ayidei Ke'anecha Hagdoshim, that the miracle of Chanukah, which came through Mesiras Nefesh, happened through the Kohanim Hagdoshim, because they were allowed to go on Mesiras Nefesh, even though it wasn't from the three Averos. After Habrengen, the Rebbe was asked a question by the Chezrim, that L'chura, this din that by other Averos, the Rambam holds, you're not allowed to be Meiser Nefesh, that's not Shas Hashmad. That's not a time when the Goyim are forcing you to do an Aveira B'dafki because they want you to go against your religion. That's only if they want to do it for their own pleasure. The Goy wants you Mechal Shabbos because he wants something cooked and he wants you to cook. Then you don't have to go on Mesiras Nefesh, and according to the Rambam, you're not allowed to. But if a Goy does it B'dafki Tzolochas, means in spite, he wants you to go against your religion, then you have to go on Mesiras Nefesh by any Aveira, even by Arkas and the Mesana, even if they want to force you to go against the minig of what color Shulei Sayyid used to have, you should go like a Goy, you also have to go on Mesiras Nefesh. And by Chanukah, it seems it was like that. And the Rebbe answered that by Chanukah, it not necessarily falls into that category. Because it seems from the Lashon of the Rambam, beginning of Hilchas Chanukah, that when they forced the Yidden to go against the religion, it wasn't because they wanted them to go against the Amunah. It was because they wanted to hurt the Yidden. And they knew that to hurt the Yidden, the worst thing to do for them, to hurt them, is to make them go against the Torah. That's why they did it. But it wasn't Bekavona, like going against the Yidden. The Rebbe is medayik in the Loshen, that when the Rambam says this din, in Hilchas Yisodei HaTorah, Perek Hei Halacha Gimel, that if the goy wants you to go against religion, you have to go on Mesiras Nefesh, he says the Loshen, that Yigzer Gzeire, Livatel Dosam, they'll make a Gzeire, a decree to nullify, to destroy their religion. But in Hilchas Chanukah it says, Gozer Gzeires, Ubitel Dosem. They made Gzeiras and they mevatel their das, but it wasn't, the Gzeira was not in order to mevatel das, but there's another thing. In other words, it was as part of their wanting to hurt the Eden. Now the same Sikha that's printed in Lekutei Sichos, it's printed in Chelik Lamed Hey Parshas Vayeshev. There the Rebbe has the same Shaila, and there the Rebbe seems to be saying that for sure in the time of Chanukah it falls under the category of Arkas and the Mesane, that's like Sasha Shmad, that you have to go on Mesiras Nefesh, but the Kashi is a little different. Even though you have to go on Mesiras Nefesh even by other Averes, but does that mean you're allowed to go to fight and put yourself in danger? If they force you to do it, you have to do it. But how could they go ahead and fight when Derech HaTeva they would lose the war and they would all die? And that the answer is, they're allowed to even do that. So here the Rebbe seems to be saying that in the time of Chanukah was Shas HaGzeira, and it was like Arkas and Mesania that you have to go on Mesiras Nefesh for everything. So it seems there are two ways to learn. One way to learn is by Chanukah it wasn't Shas HaShmad, it wasn't Arkas and Mesania, and the whole reason they wanted them to go against the religion is because that's the way they felt they're going to hurt the Eden. That's one way to learn. And another way to learn is that it was Arkas and the Mesana. Now there's two ways we can learn the whole thing. So when the Rebbe by Fabrenga said it, he went with the Svara that this was not Shas HaGzeira, and you look at the Sichos, he goes with the Svara that it is Shas HaGzeira. But the answer to the Kasha, why it says Al Yidei Kianech HaKdeshim, is the same in both. Whether the kasha was, how could they go on Mesiras Nefesh, or the kasha was, how could they go out to fight in the war? The answer is that since they were special people, even according to the Rambam, in all situations, they were allowed to go on Mesiras Nefesh, and allowed to go out to fight a war, even though they're putting their life on the line. When the Rebbe would daven Shachris in the weekdays with a minyan, with talis and tefillin, there was something interesting that we saw. Most of the years, he only davened Shachris with the minyan, in the weekdays, a few times a year. Besides Tovshin Chavhei, when he davened every day for Amid because he was an oval. It's only after the Rebbe passed away, so he davened for a whole year for the Amid, and then he continued davening Shachris every day with the minyan. But when he davened with the minyan, Shachris, with talis and tefillin, there was something interesting that we saw that he did. That from time to time, mainly before Krishma or before Shemon Esrei, the Rebbe would take with his hand, with his fingers, the top of his talis, and pull it up to make sure that it covers part of the tefillin. It would cover the mabarta and the titura, which are the part of the tefillin that sticks out from the bayis towards the head. He would make sure that that's covered with his talis. We didn't really understand why he did that, to make sure that part of the tefillin is covered with his talis. Till in Tovshin Lamed Aleph was printed Lekutei Levi Yitzchok on Zayar, the Rebbe's father's sefer on the Zayar. And there we saw that in the Zayar, Parshas Kadeshim, Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, there is the ha'ara of his father explaining what the Zayar says. The Loshen of the Zayar there is, Kad banash anach tefillin v'yischafi b'kisu de mitzvah. That when a person puts on tefillin and covers it with the covering of the mitzvah. Now the covering of the mitzvah, that's the talis. And the strange part of that Zayar is that here it seems that first you put on tefillin and then you put on the talis, because it says first you put on the tefillin and you cover it with the kisur of the mitzvah, with the kisur of the cover of the mitzvah, which is the talis. The Zayar himself says in a different place that talis comes first. So what does the Zayar mean here? Especially that the Zayar itself, in Parshas Bamidbar, in a different place, says that talis comes before tefillin. So what does the Zayar mean, first mentioning the tefillin and then the cover of the mitzvah, which is the talis? So the Rebbe's father in his Hagos, in Zahara, writes, Ayin, look into the Hagos of Reb Chaim Vital Netzutza Eiris. There it says that the Zayar meant lav dafke. It's not meduyik, it's not exactly, but it doesn't mean that the talis comes after the tefillin. It just mentions it that way, not dafke. But the Rebbe's father has a different shot. He says what it doesn't mean when you put on the talis, but it goes on putting the talis on the tefillin after the tefillin is on. which means first you put on the talis, then you put on the tefillin, and then you cover with the tefillin, with the talis you cover the tefillin. And he quotes, that's what it says in Mishnas Chassidim. And the Rebbe in different Farbrengens throughout the years spoke about this ha'ora of this father on the Zohar, as it's collected in the Sefer Teiras Menachem Teferes Levi Yitzchok on Chumash Vayikra, page Kuf Pei Ches. So when we saw what the Levi Yitzchok writes, that after you have the talis and then you have the tefillin, you should cover the tefillin with the talis, we understood why the Rebbe would do it. That before Krishma or before Shemon Esrei, not always the same time, he would make sure that at least part of the tefillin is covered with the talis, because his father writes clearly that this is the pshat in the Zohar, based on the Mishnah Chassidim, that after you put on the tefillin, which comes after the talis, you should take the talis and have covered the tefillin, so the Rebbe would cover part of the tefillin with the talis before Krishma, for Shemon Esrei, or other times during davening. Most people touch the tefillin shal yad and tefillin shal rosh and kiss it during davening in specific times, like those times. But the Rebbe would do it another time, which most people don't do it. In the Volitzian, when you come to the words of V'chein yirotzim l'fanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosseinu shenishmar chukecha b'olam hazeh, by the word shenishmar chukecha b'olam hazeh, the Rebbe would touch his tefillin shal yad and tefillin shal rosh and then put it to his lips, which means he would kiss it. And the reason it seems why he did it is because it's brought down in Shara Kailol concerning the Volitziim, when it comes to the end, when we say this Yirotzen, etc. So it brings from Seder Hayim that this part was added because really this is the end of davening. After this, there is really no more inyonim which are called from the Tikkunei Atfilah, from the Etzem of davening. That's the reason why after a Volitziim you say Tiskabel, because then it's the end of davening. And it's proper to thank and praise Hashem at that point. And then he adds also that this is the time when you could take off your tefillin. And therefore we daven, at this time when you're able to take off your tefillin, we daven today, that we should, nishmar chukecha, we should keep your mitzvahs in this world like we were zeicha to keep these mitzvahs of tzitzis and tefillin, etc., till now, that we kept on the tefillin and we were able to do it, and this is the time where you could take off the tefillin. And then he says, this is similar to the minhag of the Bnei Marov of Eretz Yisrael, that they used to, when they took off the tefillin, they would make a bracha lishmoir chukov. It's all based on the pasuk that this refers to taking off the tefillin when you have to. So therefore, by nishmor chukecha, it makes sense to touch your tefillin. And in Shara Kailal he adds, brought from Seder Hayim, Ayin Bes Yosef Erachaim Simon Chav Ches. Look into the Bes Yosef and Erachaim Simon Chav Ches, that he brought the Gemara and the Tosfos. And the Pashtus, this seems to be the reason why the Rebbe would touch his tefillin there. But the Shara Kailal finishes off, I guess, taken from the Seder Hayim, Mikol Mekem Royu LeMedagdek Shalei LeHosir Atalos Tefillin Ad Achar Aleinu, that the one that's really medagdek b'mitzvahs should not take off his talis and tefillin until after Aleinu. But it seems like this was the reason why the Rebbe would touch his tefillin by these words saying, Shenishmar chakecha b'olam hazeh. For many years, a lot of guests used to come from England for Shavuos. One of the main people was Reb Zalman Yafet. The Rebbe was Mekarev him very much, etc., etc. For the year Tovshin Chodala, they also came. And then, when they were going to leave, he went into Yechidas the Thursday before they were going to leave. So I heard him tell over a vort of what the Rebbe, he spoke with the Rebbe. I'm sure he spoke a lot of more things, and I'm sure that this is written in one of his diaries, but I just remember from what he said, then he told over. That on that Yechidus, which was Thursday night, and the plan was there shouldn't be a Farbrengen, and he asked the Rebbe to come out in the Farbrengen because the guests are leaving back to England. So the Rebbe said, that's what he said over, that he has to prepare for a Farbrengen. So he said to the Rebbe, let it be without a Maimer. So the Rebbe said, for the Sichas, I also have to prepare. So Reb Zalman Yafet answered him, as I remember he repeated, he said, you know what, so the Rebbe won't speak. Let the Rebbe just come down, and they'll sit and sing a lot of Nigunim, and the Rebbe will be there. And the Rebbe answered him to sit there for a long time, and I won't be able to hold myself back from speaking, and I will speak. I'm not sure this is what he said to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered this. Maybe he said that, you know what, let them sing a lot of Nigunim, and that'll give the Rebbe time to prepare. But I'm not sure. I think what he said was, if I remember correctly, that he said to the Rebbe, so the Rebbe won't speak, the Rebbe will just sing Nigunim. And that's when the Rebbe answered that he won't be able to hold himself back. But could be it was the other thing that he said to the Rebbe, that they'll sing a lot of nigunim, a long time, so the Rebbe will have time to prepare. And that's when the Rebbe answered him, but I won't be able to hold myself back. I don't remember exactly which way it was. The first way seems to make more sense, because the answer of the Rebbe, I won't be able to hold myself back, fits more to if he said that you shouldn't talk. So the Rebbe said, I won't help, I have to talk. But the other way, when he said, I'll give the Rebbe time to prepare, so what did the Rebbe mean that I won't be able to hold myself back? But whichever way, something like this, what he said, maybe we could check it up in the diary, see exactly what he said to the Rebbe and what the Rebbe answered. Concerning the voice note about the discussion that the Rebbe had with Reb Zalman Shimon concerning taking the medicine on Pesach, so I heard from Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Groner a different girsa in this story. He says he was actually there, standing not far, and this is the way he tells the story. That the doctors wanted the Rebbe to take a certain medicine. This was before Pesach. And the Maskirim told Reb Zalman Shimon before he went in for Mechiras Chometz at the Rebbe that the doctors want the Rebbe to take, so he should know what the story is, because maybe the Rebbe will ask him or whatever. They told him he should know beforehand. So when he walked into the Rebbe understood that he was going to talk about it. So the Rebbe said to him, please don't tell me anything about the medicine, because I will not take the medicine, because I heard from the Shver that on Pesach we don't take medicine. So it's a little different than the way we heard it before. The bottom line could be the same, because in the way we heard it before, the other Gira said that we didn't know if the Rebbe actually took it or not. So probably he didn't. But here, the way the story, he says, he heard that the Rebbe said that please don't paskin or don't tell me anything, because I will not take it, because I heard from the Shver that you should not take medicine on Pesach. In the later years, meaning in the Mems, every time they would light the menorah by the Rebbe's minyan, they would sing the whole Aneira Salolu, the famous nigun of Aneira Salolu. And the Rebbe would stand in his place and would make his hand with his hands mainly for the end, Al Nisachav, Al Niblisachav, Al Yeshua Secha, etc., etc. But I want to mention that in the earlier years, like in the Chovs and the Lameds, they did not sing Aneira Salolu every time that they lit the menorah. The Seder was that the first lichtel, the first time they lit the menorah, they would sing Aneira Salolu, and then the fifth lichtel, and then the last lichtel, that's when they would sing. And also Motzei Shabbos. Now sometimes Motzei Shabbos would be the fifth lichtel, so then it was the same thing. But if it was not the fifth lichtel, it would be another time they would sing the whole Haneira Salolu. But otherwise, the other days, they would not sing the Nigun Haneira Salolu. But those times that they would sing, the Rebbe would stand and make with his hands to L'Hoidus L'Halal L'Shim Chagodel. He would make a little bit. He would also make Al Nisechav, Al Niflisechav, Al Yeshua Secha. And it's interesting that if there were kids there, when the Rebbe would go into his room, the kids would stand in Gan Eden HaTachten, right in front of the Rebbe's room, and when the Rebbe would walk in, and he walk by the kids, they would sing Al Nisechav, Al Niflisechav, Al Yeshua Secha, and the Rebbe would make with his hands. Just like it would happen when the Rebbe would come up from downstairs from the Fabrengen, so the few kids that were there would run up when the Rebbe would leave. They would run up after the Fabrengen, before the Rebbe got up, came upstairs, or after davening, and they would stand there by the Rebbe's room and sing, and the Rebbe, when he would walk into his room, would make it his hands to the kids. So Chanukah time, they would stand there and sing, Al Nisechav, Al Niflisechav, Yeshua Secha, and the Rebbe would make with his hands. So like Motzei Shabbos, after Chanukah Licht, when the Rebbe would walk into his room, the kids were there, and they would sing, and the Rebbe would make with his hands. Whenever the Rebbe would come from his house, from President Street, and he would walk, those years that he would still walk to 770, so any bocher, a brachal, even a younger man, who would be standing outside by 770, and he saw the Rebbe coming, would run away and hide. Bechlal would try to hide that the Rebbe shouldn't look at you, shouldn't see what's going on with you. And it's all based actually on Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi, it says, Re'unin, and the Pasuk, Re'unin Norim and Nechbo, that the Norim saw me and they hid, that it's an inyan to hide when the Rebbe comes. So everyone would hide, trying to see. And sometimes what happened that you didn't know there's the Rebbe coming, and then all of a sudden you see the Rebbe coming, you felt very uncomfortable. You would try to go to the side, etc., etc. So I remember once, it was a Motzei Shabbos, and I think it was Tovshin Chov Dalet, which was the first year that Arkita was in 770, because we came into 770 at the end of Chav Gimel, Tamos Tovshin Chav Gimel. We were just about 16 years old, And it was a Motzei Shabbos, and we came to Seder, Motzei Shabbos in the middle of the winter. But we came a little earlier. There was a heavy snow, so we were still very young, and we were standing outside and throwing snowballs because we were still kids. We were just 16 years old. And then all of a sudden we see that the Rebbe is walking. I don't know why. Motzei Shabbos, he was walking to 770, came back to 770 at night, and we saw the Rebbe, so we all ran away and hid, but the Rebbe definitely saw us throwing the snowballs. And we thought, who knows what's going to happen later? Maybe he'll give her down holo with our bochum throwing snowballs. Anyway, we were afraid. Whether there's what to be afraid or not, I don't know. But we, as young bochum, we were afraid. The pale mamish, the Rebbe walked in, didn't say anything. We didn't hear again about it. So we felt much better. That doesn't seem like the Rebbe felt that this was a terrible thing. Even though maybe even if it was, the Rebbe wouldn't say anything. Not for every little thing the Rebbe would comment. But this is the feeling. Just want to bring out the feeling that we had when we saw the Rebbe coming and he saw us throwing snowballs. We felt pretty uncomfortable. Shabbos Chanukah, Shabbos Parshas Meketz, Tovshin Chav Beis, 1961. The Rebbe told a story of the Shpoler Zayde and the Alter Rebbe. And I'm going to repeat the story the way I remember that the Rebbe said it then, even though in the Anocha it's a little bit different. And this is what he said in the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe. That the Alter Rebbe, we know, wrote, besides the Sefer Shel Benyanim, which is Tanya, he wrote a Sefer Shel Tzadikim. Once the Shpoler Zayde came to the city of the Alter Rebbe, and he told the Alter Rebbe that the Sefer Shel Tzadikim, the world is not ready for it, and therefore you should burn it. And he told the Alter Rebbe that I'm going to go up in this flame to Shamayim. L'Poel, there was a fire later by the Alter Rebbe, whether it was Ladi or Lozne, and these manuscripts of the Sefer Shel Tzadikim got burned. And that day, the Rebbe said, the Shpoler Zayde passed away. And while the Rebbe was saying this, the Rebbe was choking up. The Rebbe was crying when he was talking about the Sefer Shel Tzadikim, and that the Alter Rebbe burned it. I don't know exactly which prat exactly and which words it was, but he was choking up, he was crying. And then the Rebbe said, the connection between the two, between the Shpoler Zayde and this burning of the Sefer Shel Tzadikim, I don't know, he said. But this is the way I heard. That day, he was the one that he passed away. Now, L'Poel, when they found the Rishimis of the Rebbe after Gimel Tammuz, so he also has amongst the Rishimis, Maramekemis, and Hagos, and Ha'oras, Ksoras, to Sefer Shel Bein, and Tanya. So there, in one of the papers, the Rebbe wrote this story. And this is the way the Rebbe wrote it, as it's printed in the Kuntresim of Maramekemis, Hagos, Ha'oras, Ksoras, to Sefer Shel Bein, that they gave out. There they printed the Lashon of the Rebbe's letter. And he writes like this: I heard from my father-in-law, Shlita, I'm reading it in English, that the Alter Rebbe started writing also a Sefer Shel Tzadikim, and it got burnt together with many simonim of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. I think the Rebbe says that the way he told it to me was like this: the Shpoler Zayde came to the Alter Rebbe, to his city, and I don't remember if it was to Ladi or to Lozne. I think the Rebbe was saying on himself he doesn't remember whether it was, or maybe the Frierdiker Rebbe said that, I don't know. And he told the Alter Rebbe, you started writing Sefer Shel Tzadikim, and the world can't take it. And there is a kitrug l'mayla on you. So they paskened that you have to burn it. And I'm going to go up in that lav and that to Shemayim. And that's how it was. That in the time of the Sreife, the Shpoler Zayde was nistalik. That's the way the Rebbe writes the Loshen that he thinks he heard from the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe wrote this story also in a letter that he wrote to Paris, to Rabbi Yisrael Neyach Belinov, which is printed in the Igros Kodesh of the Rebbe Chelik Tes, page Reish Lamed Beis. It's also printed in Likutei Sichos, and there the Rebbe tells the story be'erech the same way, the way I'm telling it, and the way the Rebbe wrote it there. And in the Siche Fabrengen of Shabbos Chanukah Tovshin Chav Beis, the Rebbe answered based on this, answered a kasha. The kasha was in Tanya. The Rebbe asked the kasha that it says that even if the whole world tells you that you're a tzaddik, hayei b'necha kerosha, should be in your eyes like kerosha. And in Tanya he explains, what does that mean, kerosha? It doesn't mean like kerosha mamish, it means like a beinani, which that never does any aved, etc., etc. But then we have the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek writes that the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan Zakai said, I don't know which way I'm going. Am I going to Gan Eden, going to Gehenim? And he asked Akasha, Rabbi Yechon Mazaka didn't know which way he's going. He didn't know he's going to Gan Eden. So the tzaddik answered that sometimes you could even be a tzaddik, but deep down in your etzem, there might be some ra that you don't even know about. So you are a tzaddik, and you behave like a tzaddik with all the trimmings of a tzaddik, but the pale could be the etzem like that. And therefore, Rabbi Yechon Mazaka said he doesn't know which way he's going because he doesn't know what's going on by the etzem. So the Rebbe asked, how come in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say this pshat? That even by a tzaddik gomor, you could be like a Rosha because of your etzem. And the Rebbe said, based on this story, we understand. Because was it the Sefer Shel Tzadikim of the Alter Rebbe? L'chura in Tanya, Sefer Shel Beinanim, the Alter Rebbe describes what a tzaddik is. The answer is, in Sefer Shel Beinanim, he describes a tzaddik be'erech in relationship to a Beinani. So the Sefer is about Beinanim. Compared to the Beinani, the tzaddik is the way the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. But the real level of a tzaddik, that's higher than that. And that's what was written in Sefer Shel Tzadikim. So since this is a Sefer Shel Beinanim, the Rebbe said, so the Alter Rebbe only explained the Pshat Hayeh B'necha Keroshi, be like a Roshi according to the level of Sefer Shel Beinanim. But the other level of being even a tzaddik still could be considered Keroshi because of his etzem, that's something that shaykhs to Sefer Shel Tzadikim, and that's not shaykhs to us. But then the Rebbe said, but still, the pale, since we were told this story, so siman that we do have a shaykhs to it, that it's possible for a person eventually to reach even that high madrege. And the Rebbe told the story that the Alter Rebbe once told somebody, Avem efalosach, Afmir, and who are you lying? And you're lying on me. You won't even know the road to my Gan Eden. And the Tzemach Tzedek said that this is a higher madrege even than the madrege of Rabbi Yechon Mazaka, who said, I don't know which way I'm going. And the Alter Rebbe said, I do know. And he told the person, you won't know the way to my Gan Eden. So it seems that because of Chassidus, you're able to reach the madrege that you could even change your etzem. You know your etzem is good, and change your etzem to be good. And that's something that is connected to the Sefer Shel Tzadikim, but the Shaykh is the Peil Mamish for every person in a certain level if you learn Chassidus. In the year of Tofshin Chof Aleph, which is 1960, Rosh Hashanah was Thursday and Friday. And automatically, the first 2 days of Sukkot was the same. And automatically, Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah was the same. So I want to mention that the Seder of Koshel Broche, that year, was different than the Seder of Koshel Broche in many other years of such a Kviyas. And within these three Gufa, there was difference one from another. And this is how it was. We know that the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe verbringt towards the end of the day. Since it's Friday, so the Rebbe verbringt, washed and verbringt at the end of Friday, and he benched in middle of the verbringen, gave out koshel broche, but no one could take it home, obviously, because it was Shabbos, so no one could carry, so they just drank it there. Then the Rebbe said to sing the gunim, certain gunim. Then he said the Maimer was Tikka B'chi the Shefer. Then they sang again, and then they got up to Daven Ma'ariv, Shabbos Tikka Ma'ariv. The second day of Sukkot, which also was those years there was a Fabring in the second day Sukkot towards the end of the day, which again was Friday. The thing was Seder was different. The Rebbe said the Maimer first, and then he benched. And then after that he said that Koshel Brocha is going to be Shabbos after the Fabrengen. In other words, there was a Fabrengen Shabbos Chalamet Sukkot. So the Rebbe said the end of the Fabrengen of the second day of Sukkot, that the Koshel Brocha of that Fabrengen, because if the Rebbe washed and then he benched on the Kos, he would give out Koshel Brocha. That's going to be given out after the Fabrengen of tomorrow, which is the Fabrengen of Shabbos Chalamet. Then they went to Dav Ma'ariv. Since this Fabrengen was in the Sukkah, so they were going into the Shul to Dav Ma'ariv. So the Gabbai announced that we're going to Dav Ma'ariv now, Kabbalah Shabbos, in the big Shul. So the Rebbe commented and said, not the big Shul, the Naya Shul, the new Shul. Because the Shul, the first part of the Shul downstairs, was basically finished right before that Rosh Hashanah. We know that during the year of Tovshin Chov, that's when they were building the first part of the Shul. And by Rosh Hashanah, right before Rosh Hashanah, it was finished. So that was called already the big Shul. Till then, at that place, there was the Shalash, there was the Sukkah. But that year, that's when they built that first part of the Shul. Later on, years later, there was added another part, and then another part, the third part. But then it was the first part. So the Gabbai referred to it as the Greise Shul. And the Rebbe said, the Naya Shul, nicht the Greise Shul, the Naya Shul, because this was a new Shul. And then also the Rebbe said to the Chazan that he should daven, when he davens Ma'ariv, he should daven with the Yontiv Dikenigen. I think he quoted the Frierdiker Rebbe, I'm not sure, but the Yontiv Dikenigen. And Taka, the next day, Shabbos Chalameid, there was a Farbrengen in the Sukkah, and after the Farbrengen, the Rebbe gave out Koshel Bracha. When it came to Simchas Torah, which was again Thursday and Friday, so there was a Farbrengen, obviously, Thursday night, which was the night of Simchas Torah, but then always the second day of Yontiv, on Simchas Torah, towards the Shkia, towards the evening, the Rebbe would Fabreng. So he Fabrenged again, he washed, and this was Friday afternoon, he washed. And at the end of the Fabrengen, he said that Koshel Brocha will be given tomorrow by the Kiddush. Now tomorrow was Shabbos Breishis. That was the Shabbos. Shabbos after Simchas Torah was Shabbos Breishis. And Shabbos Breishis, in such a kviyas, had two Fabrengens. Since Shabbos Breishis, Shabbos Mevorchim, has its own right, so there was a Fabrengen after davening. And then, when that Fabrengen was over, there was a hefsek, and then the Rebbe came out and washed again for the big Fabrengen of Simchas Torah in such a kviyas, which was the end of Shabbos, going into Motzei Shabbos many hours, and the Rebbe would wash. So interesting thing was that the Fabrengen of Shabbos Breishis in the afternoon, after the Fabrengen of the afternoon, the Rebbe gave out the kosher bracha from last night's Fabrengen. And then later he washed again, and after the big Fabrengen of Motzei Shabbos Breishis, which is the Fabrengen of the second day of the, to take the place of the Fabrengen of Simchas Torah, the big Fabrengen, since the Rebbe washed again, after that Fabrengen, the Rebbe gave kosher bracha again.
But I want to add that I just reminded myself that B'negeya the Rosh Hashanah Koshel Bracha, when the Rebbe gave it out, benched first, and then gave out Koshel Bracha, and then he said the Maimer, etc., etc., and I said before that you couldn't take the Kosher Bracha home because of the Shabbos, I reminded myself that those that got Kosher Bracha earlier were able, while the Rebbe was continuing to give Kosher Bracha, were able to run home and bring the Kosher Bracha home. Because I remember, and I'm pretty sure that this is so, that I myself, after I got Kosher Bracha, that Rosh Hashanah, I ran to the house where I stayed. I stayed by my Zayda's house, Reb Zalman Vilenkin's house, and I was able to bring the Kosher Bracha to my Zayda. I'm pretty sure that's what I did, because since this all happened early, so those that got Kosher Bracha before the Shkia were able to run home and then come back, and the Rebbe would still be giving Kosher Bracha and would continue with the Fabrengen, as I said before. But it's not like I said before that nobody could go home and bring home the Kosher Bracha, but many people did manage to get home and give the Kosher Bracha to the family. When the Rebbe would walk in the street, there was something interesting that we would see. We know that in the Chovs, the Rebbe, when he came from the house to 770 or from 770 to his house, or he went to see his mother every day till Tov Shon Hey, when his mother passed away, he would always walk. Also on the weekdays, not only Shabbos, but he always walked. There was something interesting that we would see. We would see many times that when the Rebbe walked in the street, you see his mouth moving, which means he was like mumbling something, saying something. Now, we assumed that this must have been that he was saying Mishnayis Bal Peh, because you know that there's a big, Frierdiker Rebbe made a whole thing when he came to America that everybody should chazer Mishnayis Bal Peh. The truth is, it's not only B'negeya Mishnayis Bal Peh, it's B'negeya any type of Torah Bal Peh. As the Rebbe quotes the Sichas of the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think from Tov Shin Beis, in Hayom Yom, for the date of Yud Aleph Teves, the Rebbe quotes the Frierdiker Rebbe saying that, and I'll read it in English, man's life is dependent on the air around him. Without air, he cannot live, and the quality of life is dependent on the quality of the air. In an atmosphere of Torah mitzvahs, there is healthy life. In a godless environment, life is deceased, and one is constantly threatened with the possibility of being stricken with contagious diseases. The first general step in healing is to purify the atmosphere. Purification of the air is the task of every person familiar with Torah and Torah literature, and is affected through the letters, the aces of Torah. When reciting words of Torah while in the store, or walking in the street, or riding in the subway, one cleans the air. Everyone knowledgeable in Torah must have some Torah memorized, Chumash, Tilim, Mishnah, Tanya, etc., so that at all times and in all places he will be able to think and utter the holy letters of the Torah. Because the Frierdiker was masbir that the air in America is polluted, and as it says in other places, there's the air of kfira, of atheism, etc., etc., and we have to purify the air. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said that we have to have ACS Bal Peh, we have to have by heart, we have to know words of Torah, so that wherever we are and we say these words, this purifies the air. Now, out of all the things that we know that the Frierdiker Rebbe mentions here, Mishnayos was something very special, because when the Frierdiker Rebbe started with the union of Chazering Baal Peh, they started the Chevre Mishnayos. They used to make a siyum of Mishnayos Baal Peh. Like I said, Chevre Mishnayos Baal Peh. They used to make a girdle, something to do with the Mishnayos Baal Peh. And the Rebbe, in quite a few letters in the first years, those years, talks about the Maila Mishnayos Baal Peh. Actually, in the Igres Kodesh of the Rebbe, the first volume, page Reish Lamed Hey, he quotes a few sichas of the Frierdiker Rebbe where he talks about specifically about Mishnayos Baal Peh. For instance, he says that now is the time to purify the air, and purification of the air is through Eisias HaTeira. So therefore, it's very important that everyone should learn Mishnayos Baal Peh by heart, and to chazer the Mishnah every place and every time that you are able to. And then he brings another sicha where the Frierdiker Rebbe said that the Mishnah is that you chazer wherever you are and whichever place you go to. This will shine and light up the connection between Yidden and Klal Yisrael and the Eibishter. And then he quotes other things about Mishnayos Baal Peh. So we see it at the main stress of Mishnayos Baal Peh. So therefore we assumed that when the Rebbe was walking in the street and he was saying something, we all assumed that he was saying Mishnayos Baal Peh. Now the truth is no one really knows what the Rebbe was saying. Maybe he was saying other things, maybe Tanya Baal Peh, maybe other things, but it would make sense that he was saying Mishnayos Baal Peh based on all the things that we see in all the sources. The Miftzeh of Taras HaMashpoche and the Miftzeh of Kashrus, the Rebbe started in the Farbrengen of Tes Zayin Tammuz Tovshin Lamed Hey. It was before Shivosar B'Tammuz. And one of the things the Rebbe said in the Gei Miftzeh Kashrus is that since it says a posik, that every Yid wants to be a chaver, wants to be a partner in any good things. Therefore, there are certain Yidden who donated a certain amount of money to establish a fund to help those people that will change their kitchens to become kosher. And the Rebbe said, since to make a kitchen kosher has expenses, you have to buy new dishes, you have to kasher the dishes, you have to buy 2 sets, milchiks and fleishiks, and similar things. So therefore, this fund is going to pay 50% of the expenses to those people who change the kitchens. As long as a person will bring a note from a Rav who says that these people kashered or made their kitchen kosher, and this is the expenses, and they'll send it to Maskirus in 770 or give it over through some of the shluchim in other cities, the Meizdes Chabad, the Maskirus will pay 50% of the expenses. And this all comes from this fund that came from these people. I heard then, and I think it was from Rabbi Weinberg himself, but I'm not sure, and I don't even remember all the details, but what I remember is that before the Farbrengen, the Rebbe asked Rabbi Weinberg, I think through Maskirus, and I'm not sure in the details, this is just something that I remember vaguely, asking him if he is able to promise a certain amount of money for Miftzeh Kashrus on behalf of Mr. Sragovich, who was a great Gvir, who used to give a lot of money to the Rebbe through Rabbi Weinberg. So the Rebbe asked him if he could, without even asking him, could he promise a certain amount of money for Miftzeh Kashrus? And he said certainly yes. And that's why by the Farbrengen, the Rebbe said there are people who gave money to start this fund. But the way it seems, and the way I remember, maybe other people remember better, remember the details, that the Rebbe had asked him if he could give promise on behalf of that person, if he could promise a certain amount of money for Miftzeh Kashrus, and that was the basis of this fund. I also remember something else, which I think, and it's possible, it has to do also with Miftzeh Kashrus, also Menegei, this person, that he gave a big sum of money to the Rebbe through Rabbi Weinberg, and I think it was from Miftzeh Kashrus, but I'm not 100% sure, I'm not sure at all, but this is what I think, it's connected to the same thing, and the Rebbe wrote, and I don't know the Loshen, but something to this effect, that by giving that amount, big amount of money, he opened up by the Rebbe a harchovas hadas, a broadening of the das of the Rebbe, that in his pulas, now he has a harchovas hadas in the pulas that he does, and I think the teichon was, even benegei and yonim, which don't have to do with money, that this sum of money made it so that the Rebbe should have harchovas hadas in the yonim of his pulas, are filling things which don't have actually directly to do with money.